Hi, and welcome back to Pick Up the Pieces. I'm Stacy, and we're back in the pickup kitchen today. We are out of our homemade pizza sauce, and the holidays are over. We're sort of in that weird week between Christmas and New Year's, and we're sort of sick of all the holiday foods. And because we're out of pizza sauce and we'd like to get some on our pantry shelf, we decided to make a batch of that today. And along with our homemade pizza sauce, we're going to make some deep dish pizza, and I'll show you how to do all of that. So also it is horrendously cold outside. The last 2 days we've been having some wind storms and snow, and so I've got a cup of tea with me this afternoon so I can keep myself warm while I cook. And like I said, I'm going to show you how to make homemade pizza sauce, which is super easy and very delicious. So we have 3 onions here, and we're just going to get these chopped up. It's a very fine chop on these, so I'll be using my Mueller chopper to finely mince the onions and the garlic. And then we will get that sauteing with some olive oil, and I will actually, while I'm doing this, I think I'll turn my Dutch oven on. And we need to add 6 tablespoons of olive oil, so I'm just going to sort of eyeball that. Okay, and so we'll let that heat up while we get our onions chopped. So this pizza sauce could not be easier to do, and it's great on like regular pizza and then also deep dish. This is also really good as a side if you've made my pizza logs and you want something to dip them in. This is an amazing side for that. And it's very easy to make, and it comes together pretty quickly, and then we will can it so that it is shelf stable, but you could also freeze it in some quart-sized containers and just put that in your freezer that way. You could even freeze it in gallon-sized like freezer bags if you wanted to. That's also perfectly acceptable. If you do not have the time or desire to can it, you could do that. These onions are already starting to be rude, but that is okay. So I'm just getting these onions sort of cut into slightly thinner sections. They will go through the chopper in bigger sections, but it's just easier to like push them through the chopper if you like cut them into thinner sections. So let me just move this up out of the way. And I love this chopper because not only does it get everything cut up evenly for me, but it collects everything in the bottom. And when you're cutting things like onions, the less you touch them, the less you cry. So this I enjoy because the onions, once they're in this little chopper container, aren't going to be so insulting to my eyes. And my garlic is going to go right through the chopper at the same time as the onions. And then I'm just going to take my garlic and just kind of cut these cloves in half just to make them go through the chopper a little more easily. But then this is going to get put right into my Dutch oven here. My olive oil is heated up nicely. I can smell it. It smells wonderful. Just going to get these little bits of garlic and onion off the top of the chopper, and then get this in the oil. I'm just going to mix this around. I don't want my garlic to burn, so I'm just going to get this mixed around right away. And I turn down the heat on this, and we're going to get this sauteing. It's probably going to saute about 5 to 7 minutes, and then we'll add some other ingredients, and I'll show you that at the stove. Our minced up garlic and onions now are just sauteing with this olive oil. I've got it over like a medium-low heat. And we're just going to let this cook until translucent. I'm guessing it'll need 5 to 7 minutes, and it's only been probably 30 seconds, so I will show you what they look like when they're done. Our onions now have sauteed for about 5 minutes. I think this is a good point to add our seasonings and wake them up before we add the tomatoes. Now, in one of the first videos I posted, I showed you guys how I cooked down my tomatoes. We bought just probably like a bushel or something of tomatoes from our local farm market stand, and I put them in a roaster pan on my counter, and I let them cook for like a day. And a couple of people actually commented they weren't sure why I was doing that, because they were saying, you know, if you can your tomatoes, you can just put tomatoes in the jar and can them that way, and you don't have to cook them down first. But the reason I take whole tomatoes and cook them down is for recipes like this. Because this recipe says to take 15 pounds of tomatoes and peel them and then add them to the pan and then cook this stuff for hours. Well, because I have my canned up already cooked down tomatoes, this process of making pizza sauce will be quicker because I did sort of that step separately. So we are going to be adding about 5 quarts, I believe it is, of my tomatoes that I prepared over the summer to this batch of onions. And before we do that and get that reducing, we're going to add our seasonings and get them woken up. And so we've got salt, pepper, and sugar here. And I will include this recipe in the description box. We've also got some dried oregano and some fresh parsley. I did not have fresh oregano, so I used dried. And then I've got 2 of my little cubes of my frozen basil that are going in. So those are going in. And I'm just going to stir these around in with the onions and this oil that's in the pan, and just kind of wake up these spices so that they taste better. I feel like when you add seasonings or spices at this point in cooking, you really wake them up, you open up the flavors, and it's going to taste a whole lot better than if you just threw them on top of the tomatoes when you put them in the pan and then start cooking the sauce. It tastes better if you do this step now rather than later. Okay, so all of my seasonings are in. We're starting to get some color on the bottom of the pan. That's great. That adds flavor. And now we're going to dump in our tomatoes. So that is 1 quart. This is my 2nd quart. And my 3rd quart. This one didn't want to open on me. It was giving me some trouble. And this is a slightly smaller jar. It's not quite a quart jar. It's like a 20-ounce jar, I think, like a typical spaghetti sauce jar, but that'll be perfect. So we've got all of this in the pot, and now we're just going to stir this to combine, and then this is going to cook and reduce. So I surmise this is going to take about 2 hours to reduce down to the consistency that we want it for pizza sauce. Right now here, this is delicious. This sauce will taste very good, but you want to kind of cook some of that liquid out of here. Like I said, my tomatoes, when I make them in my cooker, they cook for like a day, and they basically make crushed tomatoes or tomato puree, I guess. But this you want to cook down and turn it into pizza sauce. And this recipe does not take tomato paste. It doesn't call for it. So that is another reason why you're going to let this really simmer and cook on the stove, because you want it to reduce down. Now, if you taste this right before you feel like it's finished and it doesn't feel like it has enough depth of flavor, you could add a tablespoon of tomato paste if you wanted to, but the recipe really doesn't call for it and you absolutely don't need it. I find that pizza sauce has a fresher taste, I believe, than like a marinara. And so I will show you what this looks like after it has been simmering for a little while. And so we're going to just let this be. Our pizza sauce is reducing, and it will reduce by about half. So we are letting that come to a boil, or I wouldn't say boil, but we're letting it start to bubble, and then as soon as it's bubbling, we're going to turn it down a little bit and we're going to let it go. While that is happening, we are going to start our pizza dough. It is winter, it is the end of December, almost the new year, and it is cold in the kitchen, and I feel like the metal bowl in my mixer always stays cold no matter what I do. But we need to get some pizza dough going because we're going to make a deep dish pizza tonight with this fresh pizza sauce. And it takes a little longer for dough to rise in my kitchen lately. So the pizza sauce might reduce for 2 hours. It might take some time, but that's okay because we're going to let this dough rise as well. And it should take about an hour and a half for this to rise, but I'm allowing for a little extra time just in case my cold kitchen does not allow it to cooperate. So we are adding a cup of warm water to the mixer bowl, and then we are going to add, I have instant yeast. If you just have an envelope of yeast, just use the whole envelope, but I'm using about 2 teaspoons of this. The envelope is about 2 1/4 teaspoons of yeast. When you have active dry yeast, when you have instant yeast, you use just a little bit less. And you do not need to actually let this sit for 5 minutes on your counter. It will go right to work. It's called instant yeast, so it instantly does its job. And so I can already tell that it's starting to foam, and there's no need to let this sit for a while before we start mixing. So we're also going to add 1/3 cup of extra virgin olive oil. You just want to make sure you use an olive oil that you really like in this because it will be a predominant flavor in there. And then you're going to add 1/2 teaspoon of salt and then 3 cups of flour, and we're just going to mix this up and we're going to let this rise. Now, if it continues to feel like my bowl is really cold after I mix this, I may take this dough out of my metal mixing bowl and put it in another bowl, like a plastic one, just so that maybe it rises a little faster. But again, we've got some time because our sauce is simmering, so I don't need to be in a hurry. So we need 3 cups of flour. That's 1. And 2. And this is our 3rd cup of flour. So I'm just scraping down the flour a little bit here. So our dough came together pretty nicely here, and because it is so cold in this kitchen, I am going to take this dough out of this metal bowl and I am going to put it in a plastic bowl so that it rises a little faster. Let me just get this out of the way. And there's just a smidge of olive oil left in this measuring cup. So I'm going to get that into the bowl and then use that to like mix around this dough once I get it in there, so that way it will not stick to the bowl. And that oil will probably absorb into the dough, and that's completely fine. We're just going to get this in here. And there's just a little bit of dough left in the bottom of this bowl. That's completely fine. Just gonna get that in there and kind of give it a little bit of a knead right in the bowl with my hands here. And then this will be ready to just sit and rise on the counter. And like I said, I'm taking it out of the mixer bowl because the mixer bowl is just so cold. It is cold in the house. Of course, we do have the heat on, but you know, it's been stormy the last couple of days and it's really cold out. It's in the teens at night, so it is cold. So we're gonna let this dough now hang out in this bowl. I am going to cover it with a towel and I'm gonna put it right here just by the stove because it's nice and warm over here with the stove on and our sauce is simmering. So we're gonna let that rise for an hour. We're gonna check on this sauce in an hour and we'll show you what they both look like when that time is up. Our sauce has been simmering for about an hour and it has reduced quite a bit, but I'm gonna let this go at least another 20 minutes because there is still a little bit of liquid to this. And for pizza sauce, you want it to be a little bit thicker and a little less watery because you don't want it to make your pizza dough soggy. So we're gonna let that go a little longer. Also, our pizza dough has been rising and it is doing well. However, it's not quite doubled, so we're gonna also let this dough continue to rise, probably about another 20 to 30 minutes, and then we'll see where we're at. Our pizza sauce has been simmering for probably closer to an hour and a half now, and this is good. This is, I wouldn't necessarily say it's reduced by half, but it is quite reduced. And this is sort of the thickness that we like for our pizza. If you wanted to reduce this even more, you could if you like a thicker pizza sauce, but this works. And so I'm gonna put some of this aside for the actual pizza that we're gonna have tonight. I'm also gonna get this into jars and I'm going to water bath can it for 25 minutes in my Presto electronic pressure canner, which doubles as a water bath canner. And so I'm still going to leave this simmering because I want it to be very hot when I put it in the hot jars. The jars are in the canner right now and they're warming up, and so warm jars, warm sauce, and so I'm going to leave this here simmering while I wait for that to be ready. And in the meantime, I'm going to get our dough into our pizza pan. We are now just going to prepare our springform pan with our cooking spray. Now you could just grease this with a little bit of butter or Crisco. Either way is fine. Cooking spray also works just as well. And our dough now has risen nicely in this bowl. It is definitely doubled at least. So I'm going to get this dough now into my springform pan, and I'm going to kind of smush this dough down and press it into the pan and a little bit up the sides. And I'll show you exactly what it looks like when it's all the way pressed up the sides. But you want, when you have a deep dish pizza, it's basically almost like a bowl of crust in a way, and it's got sides so that you can put all your fillings in the center and sauce on the top, and then you bake this in the oven. So this is more like a Chicago style deep dish pizza, rather than sort of the traditional pizzas that I've made before on the channel. And like I said, I'm just going to get this pressed into the pan and up the sides, and then this is going to rise for 30 minutes, and then we will preheat our oven, get this all filled with our toppings or fillings, and then we'll get it in the oven. So I am just shaping this dough. And you just basically want to make sure that you have an even amount on the bottom. You don't want the bottom to be uneven, because if there's like holes in the bottom crust, then when you bake your pizza and then it comes out of the oven and you go to cut it, it maybe will make a bit of a mess. So this is basically all you need to do. It's pressed into the bottom, and it's pressed probably like halfway up the sides of my springform pan. This is a fairly large springform pan, but that's all we're going to do with that. And now this has to rise again for about 30 more minutes. The kitchen has warmed up quite a bit. So hopefully 30 minutes, this will be ready to fill, and we will then fill it and bake it, and I'll show you what that looks like after about 30 minutes. It's been about 30 minutes and our dough has now risen for the second time. I am just going to sort of press it back into the pan just a little bit so that I can flatten out the bottom, and then I can get the fillings into it more easily. So you always want to start with a layer of cheese for deep dish pizza on the bottom. Now, if you have slices of provolone or mozzarella, you can use those on the bottom. That's a nice thing to do. We don't happen to have that in the house right now. That's fine. It's not going to make our pizza, turn out badly or anything. It'll be just fine. I'm just going to make sure that I get a nice layer of the mozzarella cheese on the bottom here so that the sauce doesn't make the bottom of the dough too wet. And apparently Puppy is going to help do this. Hey, you. We've got a visit from Puppy. So, all right, so now we've got sort of this layer on the bottom, and I'm going to sort of press that in and just make sure that my pizza dough goes up the sides. And it looks like I just need a little bit more cheese in the middle. There we go. Now the rest of the toppings go in next, and then after that, we're going to put our sauce on the top. That is sort of what makes a Chicago or a deep dish style pizza a deep dish style pizza. And so we're going to throw some pepperoni in there, and then I'm going to put some thinly sliced mushrooms just on half of it because my kids don't really so much like the mushrooms, but my husband and I do. And then I am going to add just a little bit more cheese, a little bit less, of course, here than we did on the bottom, but I just want to put a little bit of cheese here just to help those toppings kind of stay in the middle. And then we are going to take our sauce now. That noise you can hear in the background, which you probably can hear, is my Presto electronic pressure canner doing a water bath canning. It's coming to temperature and it's processing right now. It looks like I have 17 minutes left of a 25-minute water bath can. So that sort of hissing sound or bubbling water sound is the canner doing its thing. And so this is what's left of the sauce that didn't get canned. I ended up with 6 pints of sauce. And so this is the sauce we have left. So I'm going to put this on top of the pizza in a pretty thick layer. And if we have any left, that's fine. I'll just put it in the fridge and use it for like mozzarella sticks or pizza logs or something. But I think this should be the exact amount of sauce that we actually need for this pizza. So, and once my jars of sauce are fully processed, they'll cool on the counter overnight, and I will let you know what those look like. I'll show you when they're all set and out of the canner. I'm just going to grab a spoon to spread this sauce. Okay, so now that the sauce is on the pizza, on the top of the pizza, I'm just kind of spreading it almost completely to the edges, but you don't want it covering that edge of the dough because you want that dough to rise up as it cooks in the oven and form your outer crust. And then I like to add a little layer of Romano cheese on the top, just a little bit, not a ton. We're going to sprinkle this on the top, and now this is going to go into a 450-degree preheated oven for 20 to 25 minutes, and when it is done, I'll show you what it looks like. We have here our finished deep dish pizza. It is bubbling hot out of the oven, so I don't want to tip this and burn myself or spill anything anywhere, but this pizza is delicious. And like I said, that sauce at the top is sort of what makes it like the Chicago style or the deep dish pizza. But we're going to let this cool just for a few minutes in the springform pan. Then we're going to cut it up and enjoy our dinner with the salad. And I hope that you have enjoyed watching this video. As always, I would like to thank you for being here with me in the Pickup Kitchen. I appreciate it so much. I appreciate that so many of you have been enjoying my videos and commenting so nicely and watching. And so I'm very appreciative of that. And so again, thank you for watching. If you haven't already, please remember to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Good night. Here's our canned pizza sauce. We got 6 pints. It was water bath canned in the Presto canner for 25 minutes. They've already actually sealed as they came out, and so these are ready to go. Usually about 1 pint will make 1 deep dish pizza, or maybe you'll have a little bit left over. And if you're just making regular pizzas, you definitely have enough to make multiple pizzas per jar. Here's our slice of pizza, deep dish, and there's our deep dish Some of the liquid from the pizza sauce does sort of seep out. That's fine. The crust here is nice and crispy, so I'm not worried at all about that. And there's our pizza.